Welcome to the Watercolour Westport Stories podcast. Today we're going to be sharing with a wonderful, inspiring woman who has moved to Westport, who is going to tell you a little bit about how she got here, what she's doing now that she is here, and what she hopes for. And today we also have with us Stephen Rolston, who is the owner of Landark Homes and founder and visionary behind Watercolour Westport. And the inspiration that he has had from other communities will also bring into some of our conversation today. So thanks for joining us, and welcome, Beth.
Thank you, Wafa. Really glad to join you today. This is great.
Yeah, it's really, really lovely that you're here with us. And I know that you have come to Westport from a really interesting journey, and I think it would be really lovely for everyone to get to know you a little bit better. So whatever you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear about you.
Thank you. Well, it seems serendipitous that we're here today because it's 1 year to almost the date that we moved into Watercolour.
Oh.
And so it has indeed been an exciting year. And I think the year before, getting ready to come to Watercolour was equally exciting.
Sure.
In part because we made a decision that we were going to move probably in 2022, and we were moving from Toronto, and so making a transition from Toronto to a new life is a big step forward, and for us it was one that we didn't come to lightly. We spent a lot of time thinking about where we wanted to live and what was important to us. We had a lovely home in Toronto, been there for 31 years, mature property, had done all the things that people do over the course of time, new roof, new driveway, lots of landscaping, refreshing the interior, all of that. But a change had occurred. It probably started well before the COVID period, but that was, we were seeing urban sprawl, urban density in our little world, and that was huge. Just a lot more people, a lot more noise. And I guess it was that summer of 2022, we were sitting out in the backyard and we began tracking the airplanes going across to Pearson. And we heard the sound, that soft but constant sound of traffic. And we looked at each other and we realized that we didn't know our neighbours at all. The people we had known 30 years ago had long moved away. We didn't know. Fences had gone up. And we just felt after COVID a kind of disconnect with our community. In fact, we really didn't have a community. And places that we'd like to go, we used to have a valley very close by that we would just walk out the house and down into the valley. It was still there, but there was a lovely path that had been paved all through it. And the animals that we had seen were gone. And although it brought lots of people into the valley, it was no longer that peaceful walk that we even enjoyed. So we said, we're ready. I think it's time to make a change. We'd retired, we'd weathered COVID, and we had hit a point. And we did what most Torontonians do. We looked west. And of course we started down in Niagara, and we'd come across a very nice community in Niagara, and we liked it very much. It had been a walking community, and that became important to us. We suddenly said, isn't this great that you can walk everywhere? Wasn't quite for us, but that became something we thought about. We thought about other things, just running into people and talking to people. That became important. We had become Torontonians where we all looked down, we looked at our feet, we didn't acknowledge each other. You know, we got from A to B because you got in the car, you got to there, you came back. So we began to look at what was available, etc. So we did the typical Niagara, Goderich, St. Catharines, Cambridge. Elora had put in a new community. And I suppose a bit of it is Goldilocks. You kept trying, but nothing felt quite right, didn't fit. Started going a little bit east, the Cobourg, Port Hope, Prince Edward County, and some beautiful homes, beautiful communities. But we had a very simple but concise, precise list of things we were looking for.
Okay.
And sort of just nothing felt good. And I don't think we were dismayed, because we said, well, you know, we're no need to move. But something funny happened. We're sitting in Toronto having breakfast one morning and opened the Toronto Star up, and one of those magazines that are always stuffed in your newspaper fell out. And in it was an article about Westport. Now, we knew Westport. We'd camped. We'd been at Charleston Lake. We'd camped in other parks around here. So we knew it was a nice community, kind of a cottage country.
Sure.
And we kind of liked that feel. We'd been up and looked around Huntsville at one time, so the Muskoka region was known to us. But we'd never come this far east before. But we thought, what the heck? And so I mentioned this to a friend of ours who happened to live up this way in Gananoque, that, hey, we're going to come up this way and have a look-see next week. Well, she was up in Perth on business and came through Westport on her way home. And she spent 3 hours at Watercolour. And now this is a person who's known me for 40 years, so she pretty well knows my tastes and interests. So she spent 2.5 hours here. And when she left, she took all the material, put it in an envelope, went to the courier, and had it couriered down to us with notes saying, here's where the LCBO is, here's where the vet is, I went through this house and you got to take a look at this. So we were up here in less than a week, and we spent 2.5 hours here. And then we walked through the village, and we spent about 2 hours in the village, because it takes you that long because you're talking to everybody as you go along. And we came back and thanked everyone and drove home. And I don't think we ever shut up, Stephen, my husband, myself in the car. Did you see that? Did you notice that? Did you notice that? Got home and really thought hard and said, well, we got to go back. Came back the following week. This time much more focused with questions. And because it had struck a chord with us, that was really what it was. And left, and now we began to get very serious. You know, what this would mean, what this would represent, because we had more information. Well, you can't just make a decision on 2 visits. You at least have to do 3. So we came one more time back, the 3rd visit. And that's when we signaled that we were very, very interested, and what we were interested in, to the point of walking around and looking at a lot that we might want. And trying to figure out the dollars and the cents. And that's when you really set up appointments then to have that conversation, which really called for the 4th visit. And the lot that we had looked at had a reserve on it, but it had not been able to be finalized. And we were told, if you really want this, this is yours. And that's the day we said, that's our lot. Put the sticker on it. We're coming. And that's how we got here.
The champagne.
Yeah.
Sounds so exciting.
And then you drive home going, what did we just do? What did we just do? But never have we had one moment where we've had buyer's remorse. It has been the best decision we've ever made, because it was the decision where we knew we had ticked all the boxes. And the hardest part was not that decision. The hardest part was just packing up and going. That became the reality.
And what were some of those boxes for you? Because everyone comes to Watercolour, we believe it's such a complete community, and we talk about that completeness and the access to that village. What were some of those boxes for you that you were must-haves?
Must-haves for us? Well, that's a great question. We start with the fact that it had to have a feeling about it. It began with a feeling, a vibe. I grew up in a small village, which is no longer existing in some ways, called Markham, when it really was less than 1,000 people. And my husband, Stephen, grew up in Unionville, on Main Street in Unionville. So we had an idea of what village life should be like. And part of what was very important to us was the ability to walk everywhere. We had spent 30 years getting in a car to go to anything at all. Now we can get in a car, and this was important, can go and pick up groceries, can go and have a chiropractic appointment, can walk down and have a little bite to eat, or a cup of coffee, Or I even have my dental hygienist here in Westport. There were so many things that just made it easier and healthier, when you think about it, to be able to go and do. So it was access to many of the key things that up to that point required some other form of transportation. So that's the first thing. The second thing that was really important was we came out of that period of COVID, as many people do, very isolated and insular. We were looking in versus looking out. And it was on our visits to Westport, as we were just getting a feel for the community, that we met so many people. And I mean, I'm not kidding when I say I can't walk down the street without running into someone where you have a little chit chat. And there was a sense of behind that of caring. People talking to you, have you seen, did you hear? It wasn't in any way, in a sense, impeding your sense of a person and privacy, which we all have. We always like to keep a little bit of ourselves contained. But people who would simply say, I haven't seen you for a while, everybody doing okay? Or I saw you out the other day with the dogs. It's great to see how are they adjusting to the community, things like that.
Isn't that precious?
Those are very important, and I think that's key. And likewise, being able to say to somebody, hey, I hear your mom came for a visit. How did that go? All of that sort of thing. People looking out for each other.
Yeah. It makes me think a little bit about those layers of privacy that you talk about, Steve, when you envisioned Watercolour.
Yes. So much of hearing your story just brings delight to my heart, because growing up in Oakville and Mississauga, my father-in-law, who's 85, can remember lying down on Dundas when it was near Dixie and Dundas, when it was a gravel road. And hearing that Markham, where through university I would drive, and post-university as a masonry contractor or as a laborer in construction, for a masonry crew. Markham already expanded, of course, quite a great deal, and Unionville. So change and growth are inevitable anywhere. And yet some places adapt really, really well to it, and other places, they lose their character. So I believe the place that you were mentioning near the Don Valley, can you tell me a little bit more about where you lived?
Absolutely.
In Toronto?
Because you're right, it's things happen very gradually over time. When Stephen and I started out looking for our first home, our starter home, the famous starter home, we had cycled all over Toronto when you could still cycle safely in Toronto about 35 years ago. And we liked the area of Don Mills, and we were in an area called Don Valley East. So very much an area that was still a lot of the first-time owners, people who had bought in the 60s. We were coming along and we were buying in 1990. So it gives you a sense that there hadn't maybe just that start of a turnover happening. The many people that we met when we were looking at where we finally did buy were first-time owners who were gardeners. They were coming up for retirement. The homes were very, very solidly built. So we were excited when we got our home, and I think we paid something like $250,000. I had never owed that much money in my life. We were just, what have we done? What did we do? And you would walk around thinking, please, don't anything break. Nothing break. That sort of thing. But what was wonderful when we moved in was the neighbors that we had were beautiful. And we had just a postage stamp type of backyard, wall-to-wall grass. And people would come over and they would offer plants and gardening advice. And they would give us ideas about I didn't have a clue about things. Certain things like, for example, do you change the filter in your furnace, for example? we had always been renters and that, so learning about stoves and how to properly clean stuff and piping, we didn't know anything. But there was always a neighbor who could come over and say, oh, let me show you, that's nothing. You know, it's easy to do. Filters, this is what you got to look for, and
right.
all that sort of thing. Or even, as I say, gardening, and when somebody'd say, well, you know, you're going to have to bring in earth, and, well, what should I do? Here, call this company, they will deliver, you know, 4 yards or 5 yards of earth.
Yeah.
And out you go, and you start to learn. Lovely, absolutely lovely, lovely feeling. And you'd come home from work, people be sitting out on their porch, come on over, how's your day? And then the neighborhood begins a slow transition because the first time owners have moved. People come in, they want their privacy, fences go up. People are all working people. So in the winter, we are mole people, so they leave in the dark, they come home in the dark. We don't see anybody. And again, we get in our cars, we drive. And on top of all of that, over a 30, 40-year period, Toronto becomes a mecca for people to come to. It's just natural. It's a large, large city. And it offers so many things. People want to live there. The movement of condominiums began, and that certainly intensified that whole area of build that was going on. And so, although you have many wonderful things in a city, you have symphony, you have certainly with the Mirvish, theaters with all sorts of productions, restaurants that you can imagine everywhere, and a lifestyle that is really one of vibrancy, of city living. What you have to pay for in price is the intensity of noise and the fact that you become part of that whole mindset of, I am private within a subway car.
Right.
I am reading my book, I have my headphones on, whatever, I'm looking down. It just takes away that natural communication and outreach and touch that were very important to people in the 80s, 70s, 60s, but the 2000s came and that was a shift in mindset and behaviors. Fine, there's nothing wrong with it. It just meant we lost our connectivity in terms of face-to-face. And that really was how our Toronto had become.
And I think we've talked a little bit in our conversations about the vision of Watercolour is something about aging in place, and even thinking about Watercolour and Westport as a blue zone, where the connection to neighbour and to community enhances your longevity. So does the walkability.
Yes.
There are those aspects of things. Do you think that there are new ways that you're integrating into Westport that you maybe didn't anticipate before you got here?
Oh, many.
Because I know you did your homework and you had your checklist.
We had our checklist, but
maybe there have been some really nice upside surprises.
There have been a lot of upside surprises. I think the first was that by virtue of just meeting people, you start to connect in different ways. For example, I know a family that has a farm here now, and I pick up my eggs fresh every week. And last week when I picked up my eggs, there was a bottle of maple syrup.
Oh, isn't that kind?
Because they were actually tapping their trees and boiling up the maple syrup, and that you've been a good customer, and they knew they had a city slicker standing there the first day I arrived. You know? I'm watching hens running by, I'm looking wide-eyed.
You're thinking, are these eggs safe to eat?
What? You know, you go, wow. Well, the difference in taste of a fresh farm egg, I cannot even begin to
really?
tell you.
Oh,
there really is.
That's so great.
But that starts, and then from there, well, you know, have you got fresh bread? Well, the next thing, I have a lovely lady who makes fresh bread every week. I pick up fresh bread, and it can be focaccia, it can be sourdough, it can be anything. I pick up my bread. I never thought I was going to be doing that.
That's exciting.
I go down the road to Kadrinkos, and I have a little chat with the butcher because I have dogs, and one of the treats for the dogs is cooked hearts, you know, chicken hearts. Well, I'll get you 10 pounds of hearts coming in. So I come home with 10 pounds of chicken hearts for the dogs. Sounds crazy, but they will tell you, and then you say, well, I know who you need to speak to, and off you go. So I suddenly have someone who makes my salad dressing.
Amazing.
You know, fresh salad dressing, fresh aioli. This is a young man who's starting up his business, and you know, Julian will say, well, when do you need it? Great, I'll drop it around. My husband loves jams and jellies. Well, we know Homestead, the girls up at Homestead, you know, we've got some wild berries, we're going to make up a jam for you. Off you go onto that. It's all the fresh, but it's the freshness. It's those things.
Yes.
I wanted to learn to knit. The next thing I know, and that sounds like an old lady thing, it's not.
No.
I suddenly have been connected with, in Rideau Lakes, some of the best crafters you could ever imagine. The talent. And it's not something that old ladies do on the stoop. It is young people engaged and developing different types of crafts, from carding their own wool, dyeing it, to I ran into an instructor at the Fashion Institute who lives out in our area. She is involved in all sorts of design, color, brightness, working with crafts.
Amazing.
There are people who do all sorts of things in that area. So we get together. We have fiber attics at the library. We come together as crafters. It connects us as people. My husband loves music. There are people who are, you know, again, just, you know, love to play, coming together to enjoy and celebrate music together.
That's amazing.
Lots of things like that. That was not on the list. That was just
Exactly,
the icing on the cake.
That's really lovely.
Yeah.
When you did your downsize, or your right size, as we like to call it, living in the right size footprint house, what were some of the things that helped you on that journey? Did you hire a professional? Did you do it yourself? Did you seek out advice from others? How did that unfold?
You know, Wafa, that's a great question. And if all of us who have moved to Watercolour are really honest, when we come in the first 5 months, we'll open our garage doors with great embarrassment and say, we didn't get the downsizing memo. We got the right sizing one, but we didn't get the downsizing one. And what I mean by that is that we did probably the smart things, which is when you get ready to sell your house, you do have a real estate agent come in, and they help you with that. Part of it, how to properly prepare your house for sale. But they also remind you that you need to clear out all the things that you have so carefully stored away for years. So you do go through a lot of that. And you know, I had 10 boxes of books that I was able to donate. Things like that. Papers that you realize I do not need my 10 tax returns.
Right.
You know, you can get rid of all of that. Much of those things go. But you still have sentimental things where in your mind you're not quite sure where things are going to go. So we all bring those pieces, and you get there and you go, okay, so when's the street garage sale taking place? And that's what happened.
Yes.
Oh, is that
Oh,
right?
yes.
Oh, that's great.
Because we all confessed to our sins and said, oh, yeah, let me show you. And so we had a big street sale. And I'll have another one. It's going to, for the next wave that has come through, because we all admit to that. Yeah. But more importantly, what we do get rid of before we start are things that we know we can let go of.
Sure.
And that happens where you have extra beds that, you know, extra bureaus. Those
like
were
peeling an onion, it comes off a layer at a time, and you figure it out to get
and
to that.
You get to that point.
Part that you needed. But
what you really need, and you start to realize, I can let go of this. I've had my time with it, and you can let it go. And you also realize that, okay, it took a little longer than I thought, but it can go, and it's going, now I feel it's going to a really good home, that sort of thing.
That's kind of fun too.
Yeah, this is it.
I know we recently did Front Porch Life.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that? And the gardening adventures of Westport and watercolor homeowners?
I will, because we always want to give credit where credit is due. So on our webpage, under our little inspiration tab at the very, very bottom of our website, they call it the junk drawer. You have all those buttons. And under inspiration, Serenbe. Yes. We've shouted out Seaside before in Florida, the founder of this movement of recreating a new old town that's walkable, but we didn't have to do that here. But at Serenbe, which is in Atlanta, the founder, Steve Nygren, he is the one who inspired us to create our own Front Porch Life, we call it, community newspaper. And he's also the one who's inspired this podcast, because they're about, they're in their 20th year, I think, or thereabouts. So they are about 10 years ahead of us with this podcast, and we just love this idea of connecting people to nature and neighbor, because we're similarly doing that here. And so this podcast, we think, is just lovely. And the Front Porch, you were featured in your gardens.
Our garden,
so maybe you can talk a little bit about gardening and how you evolved working with some members of our subcontractors and our teams.
Well, that was important. Gardening is important because playing in the dirt is a great way of de-stressing for us. And coming here, it was a fresh canvas. That is putting it very, very mildly. I remember standing and looking at what could be and realizing that we're 30, 40 years ago, Stephen and I would be out there with our shovels and that. It wasn't going to be happening at this point in our lives. I can arrange and I can think things through, but there's a lot of hard work when you have a new garden that you're going to put in. And we also wanted to landscape. And so this is where connections become very important. We had asked who had been doing some of the hardscape, putting in the walkways, the front beds and that, and had been told that there was a young man called Dylan. And he had a company called Rural Landscapes that really was from the community and understood what community needs would be. So we said, well, we're not even there yet, but is there a chance that it would be okay for us to have a conversation? So in early March of 2024, we hadn't even taken possession of our property.
Oh, wow.
But we came there and there was a representative of Watercolour there as well from Landark and ourselves, and Dylan was there, introduced himself, his company, and we said, this is who we are and this is what we'd like to be able to do. And Watercolour was just wonderful because they said, well, you don't have to wait till you come in to do things. If you want to start looking at things, getting ideas, go forward. And Dylan said, may I make a suggestion? And he brought in Ashley Cochran, who her husband and she own North 44. And they basically did what I call the softscape. So together, the three of us, Dylan, Ashley, and myself, walked around the property and said, this is where I'd like to see the patio. This is where I think we need to have some sort of tall, conical type of hedging. This is the cocktail area. This is going to be the cocktail area.
Fun.
This is where we would like to have a walkway through the side. And so by doing that, one person is saying, well, this would be stonework here. One person is saying, well, this is what shrubs and plants would be here. And one person is saying, myself, this is what our vision is.
Right, and how we want to live
how
in this
we'd
space.
like and how we'd like to live. And so working together, I think, helped us put a plan forward. And then the fun part is actually being able to say, okay, what trees do we want to do? And this is something I think Watercolour does very well, is we're all embracing the idea that if we can get a 4 to 6 year old tree, a maple in, we know if it can take, it's going to look fantastic in 5 years. It will hit that 5-year spot. So it's trying to picture that and seeing at the same time how Landark is working with us to say, yeah, where we have verges, where we have walkway, we'll work to complement what you need to do. So for example, I wanted to put in 3 oak trees that would be tall, create a natural fencing. And working with representatives of Landark, they said, well, you know what? On the other side where the verge is, the public property, we'll put 4 in. So what we create then is this lovely, lovely natural green screen. Doesn't
We like to call living fences.
living fences.
Yeah.
So we start to put that in place.
Beautiful.
And bit by bit, it works. And what's fun is then you see people going out on walks and they're looking. And we go out on walks and look at what they got going, and then you run home and say, okay, we're going to be putting a few hydrangeas in here.
Right.
We're going to be doing that.
Nice.
And it's fun. It really
That's
is
really
fun
nice.
to be
Yeah.
able to do that. And to us, the first year is always your hardest year, and probably your second in a garden, because any plant that just didn't try hard enough, it's gone. You
Right.
have to be a bit ruthless and say you didn't do it, and there's no place for you. Out you go, and you bring in the next thing. And it's been the learning, because we're moving into a different zone,
Right.
and sometimes that happens. But at the same time, it forces me to look at plants more. I'll give Ashley a call and say, okay, what do you think of magnolias? There'll be a big sucking in of, well, there are one or two. Good, let's track them down and see if we can find one.
Nice.
And that's what we do.
Nice.
And it's fun. And
Yeah.
even though we don't have a agreement any longer, we see each other very much, because she's working with other residents now in their gardens. We get together. Have you seen? We talk gardening smut all the time. It's really one of those. And
Very fun.
It's good fun.
Very fun.
Yeah,
I
and-
know there's an active Westport Blooms is
Yeah.
an active part
Yeah.
of the village. They beautify the village in really meaningful ways too.
They do, and they've worked hard to do that, which
Yeah.
I think just
Wow.
gives people a really nice sense of what nature, and yes, certainly some flowers and plants aren't going to necessarily be germane to this area, but that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of introducing that wow factor and bringing and nurturing them as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it's great, and I love the fact that everybody takes pride of ownership. We were so flattered to be asked, and even to do the front porch article, because
joy.
it was to us, we're still coming along in our garden and that, but we can see the future, and it's fun.
We'll do a repeat edition in a couple of years
Yes.
and say, now this is the mature version of this
This
garden.
is how it looks. Yes.
Which is really amazing, because actually with good planning, as the garden matures, it's less maintenance.
Oh yeah.
It's beautiful in every season, and I'm sure that you've got pops of color coming out at different times. And,
We do.
and you've created it for something that you want to live in.
We
which
do.
Is really
Which is
the
fun.
purpose. Yeah,
This
yeah,
is the
that's
fun
really
part.
great.
In fact, to be honest, we have not an ounce of grass in our backyard.
Okay.
It's filled with plants, because we hope that with time the trees will provide the shade. The shade will, in turn bring along hostas and peonies and things like that. So we've planned for the future, and rather than just say grass, let's make it living constantly.
That's really exciting. That's
Yeah.
really great.
It really is, because one of the things that really pains me is where some builders at different price points put in patio slabs in the front, and they don't give you any garden bed out front, whereas we wanted to have the armor stone and the interlock from day one. So we delight in having Dylan install the right interlock and the right foundation plantings where people want plantings. One family in here, their entire front yard has no grass as well. Mind you, they did it all themselves. They were ready, willing, and able to do that. But that's what we think is the great thing for the Rideau Lakes Association, is that by putting in this Rideau or living fence with 5 trees in everybody's backyard, 2 or 3 of them may not survive. And it is meant to be a place where people could install solar panels if they wanted to. So there's a little bit of give and take there, putting too many trees, but many people will never install the solar panels because the energy usage is so low anyways.
That is a very serious consideration, absolutely.
And so we think the absolutely amazing statistics of trans evaporation when an oak tree matures and it is giving off tens of thousands of gallons in a year back into the atmosphere by virtue of the storm drain system that's in everybody's backyard. Once those 5 trees in everybody's backyard are growing a little bit more, there won't really be any stormwater making it to the storm ponds, making it to
They'll
the
be
lake.
drinking up all of that.
That's exactly it.
Interesting.
And they'll be putting
Yes.
down roots that are going to keep the ground from running off
More
and the
stable.
earth running. Yeah. No, you have to see the vision, and I think that that's a key part of it. It's hard, and I understand for those who are veterans, shall we say, of a community, when they see something new happening, it alarms us. It's change, and we never deal well with change initially. It's always our first reaction. But there have been so many people who have come through walking at nighttime in the summer with their animals or with their families and that, who've stopped and talked with us, and how pleased they are that they're seeing the care that the new residents are putting into their property. And I'm pretty sure that makes them feel well. And I've had a couple of people offer up things to me, whether it's iris bulbs or whatever, because then you get into conversations again.
Right.
And they have the mature stock, which is great. So again, we're seeing people blend, and that's really what I think is important.
Building more community.
Yeah, 5 years from now, not only will the trees be mature, but we will be mature in this community, and you'll see a blending of people. So that's really what the overall vision and I think direction is as well.
And similar to the sustainability in your garden, how have you found living in a more sustainable home, in a net zero ready home? What's the living experience like? Have you noticed a difference from your old house in Toronto?
Oh, there are so many differences. It starts with the fact that we have spent the whole now almost year not having a gas-fired furnace or fireplace or anything. It's strictly electricity, very clean burning. That makes a huge difference right there. You don't have radiators on the floor, none of that. So that's very important. But the other is we've had a really cold winter.
Yes.
It has been bitterly cold some days.
Yes.
And we have not felt it because you have the windows. The windows are not weeping. Any of that sort of thing that you experience or we experienced in Toronto. It's almost a case of you could stand at the window and look out at the snow and go, I'm fine.
I'm cozy in here.
Let's just put the fireplace on and enjoy. And that's the whole idea, is that we didn't have to worry. We're looking at solar paneling. We're thinking about it. But what we wanted to do was get a year of electrical bills under our belt and see what they looked like. And not as bad as one would have thought. You forget that hydro has come down in its rates, the service. And to me, it really is, well, I'm still paying less to heat our home now than I did in Toronto, in a combination of hydroelectricity and gas bills. The combination of those together exceeds what I'm paying to heat our home in Westport. So that's a key piece right there. And as well as things like the heating, I think we were talking about this as a family, and I was talking to my husband this morning about that. We actually live in our living room. We do not have what we had in Toronto, where we had a living room. The dog liked it because he slept in the living room. But we never, we'd come in, use the kitchen, go downstairs to the family room, go out to the back garden. But for some reason, we never used our living room. And when we did use it, I used to hate it because I'd be in the kitchen and people be in the living room. And there was just a disjoint between, what was happening. Now, we live in our living room. It's on our main floor. And as we come in, I have the kitchen. We have friends visiting. We're always connected. It's great. And then we have a sun porch that comes off our dining room area. So again, we're still a flow of movement and being connected in the main floor of our house, which is great. Really, really important. Yes, we chose to finish the lower level, which it's been cozy this winter, and it's a great space and that. But during the daytime, we are always on the main floor. And in summer, we live between the outdoor and indoor. We come back and forth all the time. So it's nice. It really is for us. Yeah.
That's great.
Better utilization, to your question, better utilization of space.
Okay.
I think that's the key part of it.
Okay.
And
You're not heating and cooling unnecessary space.
unnecessary space,
You
or
don't
not
have-
using it.
And, yeah.
You know, it's one of those. Throw the plastic off the living room furniture. We're using it. That's really how I describe it.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, also, since I know a little bit of your story from sitting on the front porch last summer, can you explain to me your experience with Toronto Life magazine that I used to read as a child and the Globe and Mail?
Yeah.
So,
Well, the Globe and Mail for me has always been one of the most important newspapers that I always turn to for information. And 40 years ago, when I was in journalism school, they didn't have co-op programs. If you want a co-op experience, you actually had to go and see if you could get a part-time job.
Okay.
So I did have a part-time job at the Globe and Mail, and it was in the evenings, and that's when we used to put out what was called the Bulldog. And I remember the first time computers came into the Globe and Mail, it was probably the thinnest edition they ever put out, because nobody knew quite what they were doing and that. The sports desk had ended up getting the entertainment section stuff, and
Oh my goodness.
we were trying to edit, but that's just how transition in life happens.
Sure.
But one of my teachers at Ryerson, when I went to, was Mark de Villiers, who was, of course, the editor of Toronto Life. And at that time, under his leadership, Toronto Life looked at Toronto as a community and what made it a vibrant community as well. The Globe and Mail more national in focus, Toronto Life very much a specific magazine for the day-to-day part of Toronto community. And for the times, and I'm sure Stephen you found this, Toronto downtown was the working part. Bay Street was your business corridors, as was Bloor to a large extent. And then you had the sort of growing out from there of living, suburban living, and that everybody traveled to the core, everybody migrated home at night. And that's how Toronto Life positioned itself. The other magazine that I worked with, again, my co-op period was, I would start at 7:30 in the morning working with a financial magazine that looked, it was an American financial magazine, Financial Times, that looked at Toronto as one of the beacons that was going to really break. It hadn't 40 years ago broken onto the international stage as a financial capital, but was on the precipice of doing so. And part of that was looking at the infusion of investment coming into Toronto, and the completion of the Don Valley Parkway and its extension up into the 404 region, and the opening of Newmarket, Aurora, all of those areas was part of the focus. And then the infusion of capital, not only into housing, but business and secondary commercial business, building out from there into the Mississauga region, where you had people like Hazel McCallion incentivizing people to come out into communities. And again, the Globe and Mail trying through its business section to report on national business. And of course, there were periods where we saw national business shift out of Montreal into Western Canada. Again, that analysis bringing more focus to Toronto, and eventually Toronto to Calgary and into Montreal as areas, and Vancouver of business capitals. But I was fortunate to see how that communication to the public at a time when the public did read and look for its news in print, that the value of the printed word was in place. There was certainly a shift, and I think this is where Toronto Life went underground for a long time, if I may use that. It had certainly come back as a vibrant magazine, but it had lost a bit of its readership when other mediums came into play.
There's competition for attention.
Oh, absolutely. I think Moses Neimer, in bringing City TV to the fore, certainly shifted Toronto's focus into a different type of Toronto. He brought a vibrancy to youth and to culture and that sort of thing. And that came at a time when the condo concept came into play as well. And so young people looking to get away from the suburbs come back into Toronto and revitalize through the condominiums that came into play. So,
but affordability has become such a problem, and that's a part of what we're trying to address here too, is attainable homes at price points where people can enter the market and live in a livable place.
Well, that becomes an important part of it. I mean, Toronto has just outpriced itself to that extreme for young people.
And I can remember reading in the Globe and Mail when I was probably 23, 24, 25, having graduated from U of T Arundel, and started a masonry contracting business. And I thought I was going outside Vancouver to Mission or Maple Ridge, BC, because my sister was in Burnaby. And then in the Globe and Mail, because I loved all the papers, but especially the Star and the Globe and Toronto Life, but I read, Stittsville has, I thought it was the 3rd highest per capita income community in Canada. And it shocked me because I had been to visit a friend at university at Carleton, and I was like, Stittsville? And so I came and investigated, and it was because of all the managers in the government who were moving to Stittsville, or all the corporate high-tech people, but also a lot of government employees were discovering Stittsville. And 35 years ago, it was half-price land. I bought a lot for $50,000 instead of Mississauga being $100,000. And the same thing is true today. The exorbitant cost of the run-up in the last 35 years of land has meant even Stittsville land is $500,000 for a building lot. It's $1 million in Mississauga, but it's only, quote unquote, half price here in Westport for us to get land approved.
Absolutely.
And it's ridiculously expensive, but it's quote unquote, attainable.
Yes.
So that's the word we try and use, so that hopefully some young families can come here who have a GTA background, but have an affinity for small town life. And now with the whole idea of the creative class could live and work anywhere, we're hoping that some of them, the remote workers, will like some of the families in this community.
I think they will. It's also, I think, there has been a change occurring, and I see it with the Gen Z population coming through now, where they're almost coming back to where the boomer population was, where we wanted to create a family situation. My husband Stephen, for example, he lived, has always lived in Toronto, but when he was about, I would say 5 or 6, his parents saw the Don Valley Parkway being built, and they moved to Unionville. Why? Well, yes, it allowed them to perhaps get more property at a better price, but that wasn't their consideration. It was the fact that they wanted to have their family raised in a community where there was a better connection. And I see and talk to young people today. When I was working, many of my staff were, I'd say, in their 20s, 30s, and early 40s. And the great concern that they had about what was going to happen for their children, how the fear of how they would not be able to get into housing at all was there. The fact that if they did get into housing, the debt load, I thought we had a debt load, 30, 40 years ago. Nothing in comparison to what young people have to take on nowadays. But also the fact that there just was a loss of green space. That seems to have been, all the values that we had placed in our first thinking have returned a great deal. And the ability now to work remotely, but also, to be honest with you, people can say, and I know people who will head out from Westport, drive down to Kingston, takes them 50 minutes, and they hop on the bus. They have business in Toronto. They don't want to drive into Toronto. The bus runs down, they do their business, they're on the bus at 5:30, and they're coming back home. That is a day they carve out a week. The rest of the time they spend in Westport, because this is important for them and their families. And we're going to see, I think, here more of that thinking, because people are questioning, the debt, but they're also saying, well, wait a minute, I don't want to have to constantly street-proof my child, prevent my child from going outside and playing on their own. All those values that I associate with the things that I took for granted growing up.
I know.
People want to give back to their families and their children. I believe that is going to happen, and that is where you will see, and you read these articles in the papers and that, but you also hear them, conversations on the radio now. People are saying, I need to get back to basics. I've lost my connectivity.
Yes.
I don't like that. My phone has become, almost my security blanket.
Right.
We need to get out of that. Yeah, and that. So I do think it's going to happen. And as you say, Wafa, it's an evolution. And maybe a bit of a revolution on our thinking too.
As they say, the only constant is change.
Absolutely.
And if my father-in-law could grow up at Dixie and Dundas and lie down on a gravel road, and now, of course, Dundas is what it is in Mississauga.
Yes.
And I don't think Westport is incapable of accepting 2 or 3 new families a month. It's just, for some people, it is a shock. But it's a very welcoming shock, I feel, and a delightful one for 99% of the local people.
Well, it's bringing that sustainability, the year-round, to the local businesses, a vibrancy to the community, to the volunteer organizations that support aging in place. There are so many ways that the diversity of a community and the growth in a community end up being better. And I think with what Landark has been doing with this slow and steady and thoughtful pace of change is really the dream for many other small towns that want to grow, that unfortunately are being overrun with developers who aren't being so respectful. So there's certainly a wonderful pattern here.
There is.
That I think is a model, really.
Yeah, I think it preserves the community. And what I've encountered by and large with the old face of Westport is the fact that they've embraced the idea of change in people because they've come to know us.
Yes.
We are not horned creatures who have moved into Watercolour. We are people who care and think about this as our community as well. And they've come to know us. We've brought an infusion of dollars into this community, which in turn has resulted in people, whether it's the grocery store offering more selection, whether it's the stores offering longer hours, not just tourist seasonal hours, all those things, because they have come to recognize sustainability and the ability to maintain their business and business growth. And it's also attracted younger people to be entrepreneurs in this community, which I think is really critical too.
And very exciting.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. And so just so we can give a shout out to the right people. Can you tell us where you get your bread?
Okay, so
unless it's a well-kept secret,
well,
then
I'm a little
you don't want to
bit,
be competing with everybody for that loaf of bread that you really want.
First of all, Stacey Blair has a lovely company called the Pie Bar.
Amazing.
And right now, everybody knows you have to put your order in early, but come tomorrow, which will be a Friday, I will be picking up 3 different types of loaves of bread, plus some tea biscuits.
Amazing.
And she may be doing some cinnamon croissants. So, the Pie Bar is my favorite. I head out to Maple Rock Farms, and I just love the family there, the Studley family. For people who love steak and beef, you cannot go wrong with their meats that they have. But boy, those eggs are great. And I pick up 4 dozen every week. So that gives you an idea of just how good the eggs are. They just really, really inspire greatly. Julian's Jars, if you want the best aioli, barbecue sauce, pickles, Julian's Jars is the person that you want to speak to for sure on that front, because he is great. I have to put in a plug for Stone Manor over in Newborough, because I've been going there for courses, and I know that people go for watercolor courses. They have acrylic painting courses going on. I went to knitting classes there.
Nice.
All sorts of things that happen at Stone Manor. But one of their instructors, Fiona Stevenson, has been really instrumental in organizing the Rideau Lakes Stitch Society. that gets together once a month, and it brings everybody in from the Delta to Sharbot Lake. We all gather and we bring whatever we have and we share our knowledge. So wonderful people there.
Amazing.
And they're great. And again, the folks at Kadrinkos, the folks at Lake Effects, the Cove. I was down at the Cove for a Scotch tasting the other night.
Oh, fun.
It was great, just great. And Seamus and the crew just did it up fine for us. So that was another great shout out I can give to
And what
people.
about jams?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Homestead,
Okay.
the ladies at Homestead, you know, the thing about Homestead is that they use all the fresh fruit and produce that's available to do their pickling and their jamming. And they'll be, in fact, next weekend, we have our spring market that's going to be over at the arena. And I'm counting on those people being there because we're down to our last jar, so they better be there.
I love it.
And you've got soaps that are made, you know, that come in. There is Lake Maine, where if you have dry skin, and I always suffer with that, their body lotions and face products and that for both men and women are bar none. They are great.
Amazing.
And they really are wonderful.
Yeah.
I go to a lovely young woman who is a massage therapist for massage treatment. I have a chiropractor here right in Westport. So there are many things that work. We have Orchid, which is our new dental hygienist who's come into the community now. So there's so much that's happening. And again, it's just great because you name it, and I'm missing half the things that are going on. There's the underground pickleball group that meets and they play. There's people who are involved in tennis lessons. The hockey group that comes here, I see some of my neighbors who I know what they're up to on the evenings, heading out, you know.
To the arena.
They think they're old timers. I think they're great just going out and playing hockey, and that it renews them as well. So
That's
lots
neat.
happening.
That's great.
And many of them can carry their own bag and do.
And they
that's
do.
pretty impressive
That
because
That's
right
exactly.
there.
It's
Yep.
awesome.
Yep, that's it. And they walk to it.
great.
That's the best part, is we walk everywhere. And that. There's even a group that gets together at 9 in the morning, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they're walking around the neighborhood and that. And it's wonderful. That's how people meet. And it's a combination of the new folks, the older folks, and anybody who's just enthusiastic. And,
great.
you know, everybody's talking about, are you going to yoga tonight? Yeah, you going to yoga? Okay, see you there. So for that, you know, Grace Lloyd has kept us going in the winter, and Cassie Love will be coming back in the summer, and we'll all probably be meeting over at the winery afterwards.
Wow. Well, I cannot thank you enough for painting these beautiful pictures
Oh,
of
my
life
pleasure.
and how things have unfolded for you here. And I mean, this is the anniversary of the 1 year.
This is coming to our
And
1 year mark. So yes.
We're looking forward to celebrating so many more anniversaries of your
Super.
stay here in Westport and the way that things have been going. So thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. My
It's been
pleasure.
inspiring to be together.
Well, it's good to come home, and that's what we feel like. We come home, and we have come home. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth. That's so
Okay.
nice of you.
Lovely.
Thank you for joining us today for the Watercolour Westport Stories podcast. We hope you've been inspired. You can like, follow, share our podcast with others through YouTube and Facebook, and connect with us through our website at watercolourwestport.com.